The year was 1999. That sentence brings me back to senior kindergarten. When I was 5 years old, we'd read the date out on the blackboard every single day. But the year 1999, it exists as a stain in my mind, however. As a memory that'll never go away, no matter how hard I try to forget about it. 1999. That marked the year I lost my first tooth, my first time on a plane, and unfortunately the early loss of my childhood innocence. That one memory that refuses to be wiped. It all started with that new, or old TV. You see, at the time, Pokemon was the latest fad that hit the school. Cards, games, stickers. King of all was, of course, the TV show. So naturally, every time I'd come home from school, I'd be glued to the TV until Pokemon came on at 5. I remember the only problem was my dad used to like watching the news at 5:30, and Pokemon episodes aired back to back, so that meant I'd lose an episode every day. Something I'd whine on and on about. After some time, my dad must have gotten tired of my constant complaints, seeing as he went out of his way to buy another TV, and my dad put the TV he bought in my room. It was a dinky little boob tube, even had the rabbit ears. If I recall, it had just about 20 channels on it could receive, and none of them seemed to have Pokemon airing. I didn't really care though. Prospect of having a TV to myself became more exciting to me. After surfing all the channels, I came to the conclusion that only Channel 2, TVO Kids, was worth watching, so I stuck with that for a while. It wasn't for another few more months that me and my dad discovered Channel 21. One day in April, I was just naively scrolling around, looking for something Pokemon was airing on, and I stumbled into a 21st station. The excitement of finding new channels, it gave me a rush. Sure enough, to my delight, and my dad's as well, something was on. He must have let me watch it because they claimed to be airing kids shows. The station was called Camden Local 21, and I discovered it was ran a few towns away from where I lived in Ontario at the time. Now I remember the shows being aired on Local 21 looked really poorly made, and I never really understood what was going on in them half the time, but growing up and remembering it was so much more messed up than I thought it was, and I have to really ask myself what the fuck I was watching. Now the following is a list of shows and series I remember seeing aired on Local 21. How I remember them in such detail disturbs me. But this channel only really ran a small handful of shows, mainly due to the channel being only operational during 4 to 9 p.m. April 1999. Mr. Bear's Cellar, Episode 12. Sure got a sketchy name for a kids show, doesn't it? The show was filmed in some rundown basement, and it mainly featured some guy in a filthy old bear mascot costume, welcoming guests into his cellar every episode. I was always a kid. The show was filmed with a camcorder, and not a very good one either. The police, they asked me a lot of questions about the show. The episode started focused on a lit-up table in that basement. Mr. Bear was sitting there, playing checkers with himself. Mr. Bear kept going with his little game of checkers till about the halfway point of the episode. Faint sounds of a door knocking off camera, to which it abruptly cut to Mr. Bear answering the door. Mr. Bear opened the door, revealing 2 kids. One a little boy who looked about my age at the time, and the other a girl who looked slightly older. Mr. Bear danced into light and started talking to the kids. I couldn't remember this part all that well, but I do remember Mr. Bear led those kids into his cellar, which was still pretty dark, only being barely lit by that same lamp on that table. I can't remember much more after that, save for him singing a song which I couldn't understand due to him being muffled up by his bear mask. But I think I also recall the episode ended with them playing a game of hide and seek, Mr. Bear counting and the kids hiding in a closet. May 1999. Soup and Spoon. I don't think this was even a show really, just some kind of special or a segment. I know I stopped watching Local 21 for a while after this because I thought it was so dumb. All that to say, I don't really recall much of this one. I remember it featuring a metal spoon and a can of soup. They both had strings crudely attached to them like puppets. There was someone behind the camera swinging them around. I'm guessing to make them look like they're dancing? I think I remember a few times where they were chasing each other around like they wanted to eat each other. Interestingly enough, I recall this one entirely being shot in a basement. A rather familiar-looking rundown basement, I might add. Like I said, I can't remember too much of this one. The entire thing felt like about a half hour? But looking back, what I can vividly remember is the ending. The ending focused on a large, dinner-sized table with about 6 or 7 kids sitting around it, each with a bowl of soup in front of them. All the kids were facing the camera, but they all looked so visibly confused, some uneasy, some even outwardly frightened at times. Eventually the cameraman pulled out that soup can and blurted out, "Spoons ready!" And then it just abruptly ended. July 1999. Mr. Bear's Cellar, episode 23. It was summer, and I hadn't watched Channel 21 for a while now. Till one day, slept over at a friend's house, and we decided to check it out. My friend was having a 6th birthday party, and he finally got his own TV in his room. So naturally, we decided to stay up all night and watch TV. Well, up to 9:30, but to a 6-year-old, that feels like all night. That was when I remembered Channel 21, and I decided to tell my friend about it. We decided to see if it was still on, and to both our surprises, it was. Although I remember it appeared they changed up the broadcast schedule. I distinctly remember this episode being entertaining to me and my friend, because it had swearing in it. However, now when I look back at this episode, I realized something was terribly wrong when it was filmed. The episode started with the camera panned to the side, focusing on the cellar door. Mr. Bear was there. The camera appeared to be focused on him walking and talking to someone. It was a kid. Although this kid looked to be a bit older than the usual guests Mr. Bear would have on the show, this one looked to be about middle school aged. This kid and Mr. Bear were talking for what I remember feeling like a while. Although much like the other episodes, I could never really understand much of what came from Mr. Bear's end. But I do remember there was a point where the kid started to really raise his voice. He mentioned something about it being really late and that his sister had to come home. There were multiple other voices in the background, but I was never able to understand what they were saying. Then, most clearly, I remember Mr. Bear audibly lost his temper. To a point where he audibly yelled, "Get the fuck out! You're not invited!" from under his mascot costume. I remember me and my friend looked at each other and laughed to tears over a mention of the forbidden F-word. But the episode only got weirder from there. I then recall the kid climbing the stairs. He raised his voice again, threatening to call the police. I remember Mr. Bear then broke out in a run, barreling towards the kid, who started screaming and running as well. When they were both off camera, the episode then just abruptly ended. Shortly after this, the whole channel just cut to static and signed off for the night. August 1999. I didn't want to see any more of Channel 21 after that. But at the same time in August, I grew stupidly more curious about Mr. Bear's Cellar. After all, that episode in July did have swearing in it, so I naively thought it was some cool show for adults or something. Nonetheless, one fateful night, when my dad was busy, I decided to switch on to Channel 21. Mr. Bear's Cellar. Episode 28. Apparently the police have studied this one the most extensively. This episode was the first since the beginning of the pilot to feature no guests. It only featured Mr. Bear himself, sitting at his checkers table directly facing the camera, talking to the audience. "Hello, kids. Would you like to visit my cellar? If you do, please send me a letter at this address.
The footage then switched to nothing but a crude white screen with the home address displayed in the center. And this screen had remained for the rest of the episode. According to the police, nothing but that episode would air for 5 hours on repeat every day. Until that September came. And you'll never guess what I actually did. I sent Mr. Bear, or whoever that sick fuck under the mascot costume is, a letter. I felt I did it out of curiosity mostly, and my dad was still under the impression that it was a kid's show, so he was alright with it. So I wrote him a letter using my best handwriting possible. I think I just said something about wanting to meet Mr. Bear, and my dad sent the letter out to the address Mr. Bear had broadcasted. It took about a week, but I got a response. I was surprised I did, and to this day, I still have that letter I received on August 15th, 1999.
Dear Elliot, thank you ever so much for your letter. We're going to have so much fun in my cellar. We can play games, watch movies, and go fire camping. I look forward to your visit, Mr. Bear.
I cannot believe my dad never found this sketchy. Because he actually took me to the fucking house. And then that's when the police got involved. Those endless questions, those pictures of terrified kids in the woods. That brings me back to why I'm writing this blog. That psycho and his friends did some fucked up things back in the day. And now, it's happening again.